Hello there, and welcome to Doctor Who Radio Show. I'm Master Goes N9, and this is...
Hello, this is Michael Shannon here. How's everybody doing today?
And this is a preview and also review episode of Doctor Who Radio Show. Quite simply, the start of the preview and review are bookmarked, and all you have to do is click on them in the info bar and you can listen to each one. So for instance, if you've not seen the episode, you can click on the preview one, or if you have seen it, you can click on the review, or simply enjoy both. So the episode we're talking about is A Crimson Horror, written by Mark Gatiss, and the return of the Fabulous Three. What do you think this episode is going to be like? Do you think it's had a good sort of build-up press-wise?
Yeah, I'm liking it. The preview so far, we get to see Jenny, Madame Vastra, and Strax all together. You know, like a proper, mystery. You know, they're like crime solvers. You know what I mean? From the past, which is like a Sherlock, basically, which I happen to love too. So they're like a little team of Sherlock. I think it's going to be a good story from what we're seeing so far, definitely.
A continuation of what they were in the Christmas special, although even then they already had a reputation of being the sort of local detectives for hire, I suppose, especially the relationship between Vastra and Jenny, the luscious, delicious Jenny.
Yes, it is getting steamy, huh? Definitely.
I don't know about you, but when I saw them in the Christmas special again, I thought it was better developed. They had more of their own personality. They weren't just simply, ciphers or people. Well, I got the impression the Doctor was calling in favours. Good man goes to war. But this time they were their own sort of team, like their own sort of A-team or Mission Impossible. It's a bit like Sherlock Holmes and Watson, really, but then
it did seem like...
I just had a thought. Vastra is Sherlock Holmes, Jenny is like Watson, and Drax is Mrs. Hudson. yeah, why not? You know what? It did seem like you were saying, they seemed a little more put together like a team, in a Christmas special, which is definitely cool. It seemed like the Doctor was definitely calling on them when he needed, help in different situations. But I definitely see that myself too. Yeah. Who's your favourite, do you think, out of the three?
I like Strax. I think he's cool. He's my buddy. I like him, man. Or her. I don't know. They don't have any sexual organs, right? They're not male or female, right? Well, they're clones.
They were sort of asexual, aren't they, type thing?
Right. Yeah.
They have no perception really of sort of.
Right. And what's he do? He kept calling Clara a boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him in action. I heard he has a good fight scene.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's cool.
Oh, blimey. So this is set in Yorkshire, Victorian Yorkshire, as opposed to London, so presumably they've moved on or investigating in a different area. And it's a Doctor Lite episode and a Clara Lite episode. They're sort of day off, I suppose.
Yeah. They don't do that too often. I think, what was the last time they did? The Girl Who Waited was kind of Dr. Light a little. But before then you had Turn Left. Yeah. That was Dr. Light, definitely.
Blink as well.
The Blink, of course. Love and Monsters, one of your favorites. We all love Love and Monsters, come on.
I'm not entirely sure what is the problem with Love and Monsters with some fans. Because I liked it.
Let's see. Okay, I'll tell you why people get upset with it. Mainly, the Absorbable Oath was a bit ridiculous, but he can be passable. But I think the main thing that ruined it for people was the Doctor, basically having that girl turn into the head at the end of the cement slab head. You know, it wasn't, it might have been funny. It was funny, but it was definitely not child friendly if they're going for a family element, especially when they said they have a love life. What would that consist of? You know what I'm saying? So it got a bit weird. The girl can never die, apparently. What happens when Elton dies? Where does she get left? You know, who takes care of her? You know, it's just weird to see Doctor do something so, it just seems evil that he did that to a person.
Oh, it's simple. She can be hired by a family. They can put her in a bathroom and she can be a security guard.
Yeah, something like that, or yeah. I guess there's a couple jobs she could get, you know, but I don't know. It just seems like it would be a horrible existence, you know, and, you know, will we ever see her character again? I wonder.
In a DIY show, probably. But it did have, you know, ELO music, which I'm a big fan of that now. Mark Warren was rather good. So it's possible to have a Doctor Light episode which actually gives the characters, you know, Clara, etc., a chance to shine. This is presumably going to operate also like a sort of pilot order for you know, Vastra and Co.
Yeah, if it does well, and you know, if fans enjoy it, why not a spin-off, you know? They've done it with Torchwood, they did it with Sarah Jane Adventures, you know? And it worked. I watched all those shows, you know? I'm not going to say every episode was always good, but you got to take the good with the bad. You know, nothing wrong with a new spin-off.
There was Torchwood, of course.
Yeah.
Recently, both John Barrowman and Alex Kingston have been basically trying to get the BBC to give them a sort of spin-off together.
Yeah,
the question is, can the scriptwriter really contain their personalities? I don't think so. Jesus Christ.
That would definitely be an adult show. Definitely, yeah. Yeah. Cocks and
breasts.
And boobies. A little bit of boobies here and there. Yeah, lots of penis, like you said, most likely, yeah.
But to be honest, I think Strax is the most interesting character of all. The actor who plays Strax has done several little video clips where he's in character. And he's absolutely on a roll. There's this one that you've watched, I think, where he's in a school and he's answering questions of little kids. And it's almost like he's able to channel the whole spirit of his character. But anyway, needless to say, Diana Rigg of the Avengers and the Game of Thrones is in this story.
Cool.
According to Mark Gatiss, the writer, this is his second contribution. Not only is this story, as he said, the Crimson Horror, is the sort of thing I always wanted to write, he also purposely wrote the character of Mrs. Gilliflower, this sort of fascist proto-Nazi sort of mentality character. Religious nut, basically, I suppose. End of days type thing. He actually wrote the entire character for her, which is a first, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, to write around an actor, that's pretty cool.
This is an older sort of villain. Do you think that's going to be a interesting spin, or?
I think it's going to have some tie-in with the Christmas special. I don't think it takes too much time after, you know, the Christmas special happened. I think this is a couple months later.
Ah, I see.
You know, so there might be, hey, you know, I don't want to say, but we might see the Great Intelligence in this one.
Ah.
Could be a possibility.
It's bound to be lurking somewhere. Or
it has to be, yeah. Like, we know that, you know, from, we know they're in the future, and they're in the past, but they came back somehow. They know in this episode. I doubt they're going to do it. The Cybermen episodes is going to be for the Cybermen. I don't think they're going to get too much into the the whole story arc too much with that. They gave that to Neil Gaiman, to write his whole fantasy on the Cybermen, which is going to be awesome.
Ah.
But yeah, we might see the Great Intelligence. Yeah, definitely.
So basically, if you include the Christmas special, including the season final, The Name of the Doctor, it's like a trilogy of stories featuring Vastra and Co. And the Great Intelligence, really, this keeps popping up in my little head. It's really like the 20th anniversary's, sort of lurking villain of the Black Guardian, really.
How cool would that be? The Black or the White Guardian, either one. I mean, I'd love to see them in an episode, officially.
Yeah. But the only difference is you sort of saw the Black Guardian in one way or the other in every story, but with the Great Intelligence he's been keeping rather quiet. A very brief appearance in the balls of St. John.
Yeah.
You haven't seen anything of him since, or have we?
Have we? Maybe we missed it.
Yeah, but I bet they're going to sort of. The impression I got from Stephen Moffat's quotes is that everything's going to be basically tied up in the Name of the Doctor. Things going back several seasons, apparently.
Oh, okay.
Sort of loose strands that have been hidden in plain sight, as it were, and turn that on. Anyway, let's have a look. Of course, I'm just getting another idea out of the bag. This is Mark Gatiss' second contribution, just like Neil Cross. Now, unfortunately, oh dear, Neil Cross wrote the Rings of Benny Hill and then Hyde, and of course Mark Gatiss wrote the not a classic but not dreadful Cold Bore, and he now writes this very much like the Unquiet Dead, really sort of the Hincliffe sort of Gothic era type feel, which he would have been inspired by. And Doctor Who magazine 460 has one really, really unpleasant review of the Rings of Benny Hill, and particularly of Neil Cross himself. Now, Doctor Who magazine, everybody usually gives a rather glowing review of most episodes. It's usually in the positive, but with Neil Cross's The Rings of Benny Hill, they basically suggest that he hasn't actually watched any Doctor Who since the 1980s, and the whole thing was oh god, there have been some absolute lapses of logic in the latest series. What went wrong? Because he didn't do a bad job in Hyde. Mark Gatiss seems to be completely clued in with Doctor Who. So why has Neil Cross sort of buggered it up while Mr. Gatiss, you say Gatiss, I say Gatiss, managed to sort of hit it perfectly?
Dude, that's rough, man, because you got fans that love these episodes or hate them. Some are a little bit in the middle. Like with Hyde, I loved Hyde. I thought that was awesome. And like the Rings of Akatan or whatever you want to call it, that was okay. Wasn't my favorite, you know what I mean? The Bells of St. John I thought that was cool. What am I missing? The Cold War, I thought was cool. I love the Ice Warrior, and if that's just a step to bring the Ice Warriors back in a full, story, like where they're really at war with another planet or maybe Earth, that'd be cool, because they did look awesome. Well, the one that we saw, he did look awesome. Their ship looked really cool. I thought in some elements of each episode they did cool, but not Journey to the Center of the TARDIS. That was the I wasn't happy. I gave that like a 5 out of 10. I wasn't really that thrilled with that one.
Well, Doctor Who magazine reckoned the big reveal of that, tricky had been told he was an android, simply because they thought he was annoying them too much. That was the reasoning of the brothers. They've considered that plot twist to be the worst in Doctor Who's history. You thought the Crotons, or Time Lash, or some of Sylvester McCoy's stories, like Time and Nirvana or something, were bad. You haven't experienced anything. I mean, I literally found myself laughing out loud. Are these supposed to be brothers? And they're suddenly saying, the only reason we told you were an android all this time was because he pissed us off, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, Matt Smith, he has the still act outrage, and he's convincing it is outrage, but the simple fact is, like Peter Davison said in the 20th anniversary, apparently one of the things that made him want to leave was the diminishing quality of scripts. For every enlightenment or every genesis of the Daleks, there's a Rings of Benny Hill. It's like a Doctor Who sort of yin yang. For every good story, absolutely classic, there's got to be some absolute pile of wank.
Yeah, I agree. I think we got more good stories out there than bad. You know what I'm saying? You got some. Again, it's your opinion. Like, some people hate, like, the Happiness Patrol. Some people love it. Some people want the Candyman to come back. So it's all up to your opinion. But there are episodes. Journey just wasn't good for a classic fan of Doctor Who. A newer fan might enjoy it. That started with Christopher Eccleston, 2005. They might have thought that was cool. But somebody like us that watched the old series that we wanted to see, we didn't care shit about any story. We wanted to see the inside of the TARDIS. That's what we wanted to see. We wanted to see the swimming pool. We wanted Clara to get in a bathing suit, swim around a little bit.
Missed opportunity.
Exactly. Well, she did at the end. I believe she did at the end because her hair was wet when she was talking to the doctor at the end. But they never showed it.
He's going to have a show anyways. That's the problem with that episode. It was all sort of tell but no show. Yeah, it's like a cock tease, if you pardon the expression.
Exactly. They put. What did she see in the Time War book? We'll never know because it got erased anyway.
The BBC will never. There's been many fans saying, wouldn't it be brilliant if there was a special, like in the last several months, a special that shows how the 8th regenerated into the 9th Doctor. It's not going to happen with the BBC because they're cheap, basically. CGI in the Rings of Benny Hill basically were proven to have the same sort of, if not controlled and used properly. I've read this plenty of times in sort of movie reviews. The monsters are spectacular and appear brilliant in Hollywood films, but they don't fit into the backdrop, and the same with the 70s blue screen. But sometimes it worked an absolute treat, and CGI backdrop can be used very well. But that Doctor Who magazine was pointing out that it looked, this new technology actually made it look cheap. Very strange. But with the Journey episode, it was like the opposite. They just thought, we'll just stick a superimposed image of the entrance to the place and think that works. And then Stephen Moffat's been building up yet again another episode like it's the greatest thing since I lost my virginity. Well, the 50th anniversary season is supposed to have little kisses to the past, as they call it. Each story, like I've thought, has a little bit of an echo and style of the past. like for instance the Crimson Horror will have an echo of the brain of Morbius, or the Talons of Wang Chiang, of course.
Tegan will get mentioned.
Yeah.
Tegan.
And the 50th anniversary story will be the explanation mark, the big, cake. So I would have thought that the Journey story would be like the thank you to the TARDIS, a character piece where the TARDIS actually gets to be a cast member in itself, exploring precisely who the TARDIS is, or what the TARDIS is. But it was just sort of doing it by numbers, sort of playing it safe, really.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. Again, you're talking about the episode that I didn't like that much just because we didn't get to see what I wanted to. We got to see the library. The library looked awesome. It did look awesome. We got to see a little coat room with little Amelia Pond's TARDIS you had in there. The Doctor's crib was in there. I couldn't make out anything else. I pulsed it just to see if there was any other companion items, but I didn't notice anything. I think it could have been, a little more in depth with some trickles from the past, like you were saying, man. Definitely.
Well, based on what we've seen so far, the one story that really stank was Rings, and all the others have been sort of either in modern, Earth, well, England at least, and it just seems that the BBC and Doctor Who does Victorian type stories better. The origins of the Doctor are actually in H.G. Wells, oddly enough. Invisible Man, Time Machine, that sort of thing. Right. So that makes sense, really. Yeah. And Matt Smith's Doctor would fit perfectly into the Victorian era. And he did, didn't he, really? He was supposed to be there for, God knows, a century or two, maybe? Yeah, I don't know.
Something like that, yeah. I mean, I didn't say exactly, but he was there for a long time.
What do you think will be the revelation?
I just have a strong feeling, we're going to see the great intelligence by the end of the episode. That's going to be the reveal. The great intelligence. And then, because the following episode is going to be a story on its own. The Nightmare in Silver is going to have nothing to do with probably anything of the story arc. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. They're
giving it to Neil Gaiman. It's going to be great. So I think this story is going to more lead into the Doctor's name, and the Nightmare in Silver is just going to be in the middle there on its own, in a way. You know what I'm saying?
So Crimson's going to throw a surprise at the end, another appearance of the Great Intelligence, and also set up things for the name of the Doctor. Nightmare in Silver is going to be like the sort of, just like Closing Time was the penultimate. Nightmare in Silver might have a couple little, running bloody Cybermen. They're supposed to be running this episode.
Supposed to be what's that?
The Cybermen are supposed to be able to run.
Yeah, how about that? How amazing is that going to be?
Ben Johnson Cybermen.
But I do. You know what it is though? I love the way they look too. I love their new design. I think they look awesome. Yeah.
And Warwick Davis is in it, of course, isn't he?
Warwick Davis, yeah. Who's known for being Wicket the Ewok on Star Wars, and he was Leprechaun.
Oh yes, oh yeah.
And if you watch, and if you're lucky enough
to watch those, yeah.
Life's too
gold. He's living in gold.
Life's too short.
Willow,
of course, yes.
Oh yeah.
Val Kilmer, but his show he has, Life's Too Short. That's a pretty funny show that he has. I don't know if they show.
There was an Easter special of that show where Life is Short.
Yeah, they just had the Easter special, yep.
Yeah, with Val Kilmer in it.
Dressing up like Batman.
And there was a right arsehole in that, wasn't there?
Yeah. That's why it's funny, because everybody's an asshole in it, It's just...
No, but he sort of got Warwick Davis to think that he had, George Lucas and all that lot.
Yeah, to make a Willow too.
Yeah,
Willow too. Yeah.
And he's just basically getting the money, living a tourist lifestyle or something. And that scene where he's sort of berating Ricky Gervais, saying, "Do you know how much money it costs to live in, this hotel, and how much this food?" Because if you don't, then you're dumber than you look, or something like that. Just and that's all we had time for on this preview of Doctor Who Radio Show. And yes, it is a preview, even though it's gone on for a long time. But that's the good thing about this juicy little banana of Doctor Who Radio Show. Next on this, there is a review of the episode Crimson Horror, and hopefully it won't be as horrifying as some of the other episodes. But That's the Way It Goes, and thank you for joining me. This has been...
Thank you, Michael Shannon here, and thanks for having me, bro.
So, Michael Shannon there, thank you for joining us, Michael. And now this is the actual review. As I said before, this is split between a preview and review. So, if you haven't seen the episode, you can watch the preview simply by clicking on the time bookmark in the info bar of this video, or if you want to go straight to the review, click on the time bookmark for the review. And the review is, of course, the Crimson Horror by Mark Gatiss. I say Gatiss, you say Gatiss. Now, I watched the video by Joker Scribe, the artist formerly known as I Describe Now, and he didn't like it at all. He thought it was one of the worst episodes ever during Moffat's Reign of Terror, which is a pun on a William Hartnell story. However, my friend Stephen Price loved it. So I suppose it's going to be another episode that divides people. It's not as bad as The Rings of Benny Hill or The Journey to the Bottom of the Toilet, as Matrix Lord 212 put it. Written by Mark Gatiss, it was guaranteed to be good. But, and this is the problem really, just like the Neil Gaiman episode next week, which is Nightmare and Silver, you have high expectations. I think it's fair to say that after a few dud episodes and some absolutely atrocious plotting logically, like the whole Tricky isn't really an android and we only told him that because he got on our nerves bit, which quite frankly is ludicrous. That was the best bit of comedy that never was intended to be comedy ever. Maybe some viewers, particularly older fans, have had their goodwill sort of used up. They're not really interested. Only a few episodes away from the big two, The Name of the Doctor, and of course where's the damage? The 50th anniversary story. We're not really interested in any more dud episodes. We want episodes of quality that are going to be like a really great run, like the E-Space trilogy or something like that, or the End of Time, the movies of the Ninth Doctor and then the End of Time, because they were good quality. The episode is beautiful in terms of the Victorian sets and the way it's recreated. Quite simply, if you are an American producer on a TV set in the USA and you want to recreate Victorian London, then just go to the BBC, ask advice from set designers and photographers and costume designers, and they will be able to give you the best advice, because the BBC do it perfectly. You cannot fault this episode on that. But really, it's easy for the BBC to do that. So it opens with a brother dying, investigating something, and that's where you see Mrs. Gillyflower right from the first line she has, you can tell she's no good work at all. And then you have the brother, who just by sheer coincidence looks like him, except a bloody moustache. I think that's a nod to Hammer horror type thing, actually. Yeah, like the Dracula movies, where a relative of one of the victims of Dracula gets suspicious and starts poking around. Yeah, that sort of thing. So he goes to London, all the way from Yorkshire, and seeks the advice of the great detective. Not that great detective, but Vastra Detective and Co, Jenny and Strax, who are still in Victorian London where they were left in the Christmas special, which really was absolutely bloody brilliant. But more about that later. And they're apparently just as well known as the great detective himself. And what I find a bit bizarre is that Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss, I say Gatiss, you say Gatiss, created Sherlock and set it in 21st century. Never mind that elementary bollocks, that was like a rip-off really. But the bizarre thing is, Jenny and Co are more closer to the original Sherlock Holmes, even though that, well, two of them are aliens. And Sherlock is actually in 21st century. I find that odd. And, they investigate it. They have an entire plan for it, And apparently they know the doctor's gone missing or something like that. I'm not sure how they knew that. I don't recall them being told by the doctor that he was going to investigate it himself. So they send Jenny in to infiltrate. And to be terribly honest, I don't think Vastra or Strax had as much to do as Jenny. They were basically sidelined. Now, as I said to Michael, I had the impression that this would be a Dr. Lite episode, just like Blink or Monsters, Love and Monsters. I get it mixed up. Well, who knows, perhaps monsters can be in love and you can be in love with monsters. But it wasn't Dr. Lite at all. It wasn't. And that's the odd thing here, because I seriously expected him to, be written out of it for most of the episode, and then sort of somehow pop up at the last minute. But that actually doesn't happen. It's actually lighter on the other two. And Jenny really gets the lion's share. I presumed it was going to be a pilot, to really test the waters of the characters, having the entire episode to themselves. But not, apparently, no. Mrs. Gillyflower, as Jenny finds, is a fire and brimstone preacher. At the end of the 1800s, there was a lot of fear, just like at the end of the 20th century and the last millennium, the end of days, all that sort of thing. With 2000, it was all about, the millennium bug. With this, it was the coming of the Industrial Revolution and the dying of the old ways. And that's what this Mrs. Gillyflower is playing upon. If you don't join us, if you don't repent your sins, then you will be cursed to a black hole of damnation. And that's what she's preaching. She's basically suggesting that she has a utopia that all these people can sign up to. They can be part of a great rebirth of some sort of spiritual type thing. And that plays again into the Hammer horror fandom of Mark Gatiss. The whole idea, Dracula movies or Mike Myers movies. If you're about to have sex, or you're thinking of sex, or you just had sex, then you're a goner in those movies, And that's the point of Dracula and all those other films, Frankenstein. They were always set in the 1800s type setting. Always. And that's where Frankenstein's monster comes into play. Eventually Jenny discovers who the monster being looked after by B is. That's the daughter of Gillyflower. Gillyflower? What kind of name is that? Diana Rigg, by the way, is absolutely brilliant as Mrs. Gilliflower. She's absolutely villainous. There's no hiding here that she's a villain. You know, it's plainly obvious. They're not even trying to pretend it. And I think that's it. Just a sense of enjoyment and abandonment with that character. And she racks it up big time. Even higher than Kate O'Mara in The Mark of the Rani, which is the closest Doctor Who story I can think of in relation to this, because that was set in the same period. You know, literally when the Industrial Revolution came along, just like in Mark of the Rani, you had people wanting to destroy these newfangled machines. You know, because to some people those machines were not only getting rid of, you know, working the farms on your own, etc., but they were connected to, you know, the devil and all that sort of thing. So Jenny discovers who the monster is in this room, but it's sort of blatantly obvious who it is, and it is the Doctor. He's red, not just red, but he's also basically he's all sort of red and solidified. He can't move that well. And as soon as Mark... Oh, bugger it. He's incapable of moving. You know, his body's all stiffened up. And it was quite obvious from the wonderful Matt Smith moment that this was a homage to Frankenstein's monster, particularly Boris Karloff. Because he had his arms stretched outwards, didn't he? You know, he sort of going, rah, rah, not able to speak properly. But the thing is, it was rather distressing, actually. I found myself being a bit rather disturbed by seeing the Doctor in that sort of state so much. You know, here he is, completely helpless, you know. And Jenny really did do a good job of it. And then I noticed that Jenny reminded me, bizarrely enough, of Victoria. Now, obviously, Victoria isn't a Cockney from London at all, but you know, it's so similar. And then I noticed that actually Jenny would be a perfect companion for the 11th Doctor. They would fit perfectly. You know, their characters and the way they respond to each other would suit perfectly. In fact, I'd rather have Jenny than Clara, personally. Just like Peter Davison said, he wish he could have travelled in some respects just with Nyssa, you know, because their temperaments, you know, sort of matched each other type thing. So anyway, Jenny's managed to free the Doctor, and then he gets the sonic screwdriver out, and yet again, everyone, that's it. He manages to free himself. Somehow it cures him. Now, later it's pointed out that this is actually a venom or some sort of poison from 65 years ago, from the time of when the Silurians were in charge of the planet. And that's all Vastra says about it, really. It doesn't go any further into it, really, which is a bit of a waste, because it's implied that Vastra was around then anyway. But the problem is, it's another boring sonic screwdriver, cures all the problems of the story in just one foul swoop, and that's it. The reason why John Nathan Turner wanted to write out the sonic screwdriver, which he did in The Visitation, was because it became a cop-out for writers. Instead of having a challenging, clever solution, which might actually push the plot forward and make it interesting, all you have to do is just pull a few switches and that's it. Yeah? And that's what it's become. It literally has become, to all intents and purposes, you know, just to cure everything. Yeah? And I think it's boring. The sonic screwdriver is bloody lazy. Yeah? I mean, literally anything seems to be defeated by the sonic screwdriver now. Yeah? And how would the sonic screwdriver manage to cure him of a 65 million year old poison? which apparently is spread by a sort of reptilian insect creature, which in this episode is called Mr. Sweet, which existed at the same time as the Silurians, which is how Vastra knows about it, because it caused them havoc. It sort of polluted their water, etc. So somehow there would have been sort of really red Silurians. Why would a sonic screwdriver cure that? Is it now some sort of medical device? It's become almost like a glorified Star Trek The Next Generation, medical tricorder or something. It's like one of those remote controls that you can program virtually everything you have to do it. TV, satellite, hi-fi, dildo, I don't know. Good God. I think that's the one problem with the sonic screwdriver new series. It's taken away the mystery of it all. And maybe John Nathan Turner was trying to avoid, it becoming silly. I don't know. This is the guy who tried to create Cameline from the fifth series. Fuck it. Bear in mind, this is the same producer, John Nathan Turner, who wanted to create a new canine for the 1980s in the shape of the robot shape-shifting Cameline, which went completely wrong, of course, because the original operator died. There's a deleted scene, I believe, for the 5 Doctors, where they explain what's been going wrong with him or something like that, and then he appears in the Planet of Fire where they write him out. And really, I don't know, is it time to retire the sonic screwdriver? Has it started to just become an uncharacter? Anyway, this does have some similarities to the next Doctor, but mainly it's Mark Gatiss, because it has the female character. And like I said, when Matt Smith is all frozen up and red, he's like Frankenstein's monster. Another element of Frankenstein's monster is the blind daughter of Gilliflower. Now, in Frankenstein's monster at one point in the book comes across a blind old man living in a hut, and that's when she's in love with the monster, she calls it, which is what it's called in the book, the monster. And that was almost a direct scene, which I love, a little thing for people to pick up. Unfortunately, this is where the episode started to go wrong. After the wonderful flashback scene, which explains how the Doctor ended up in the situation of being caught and stuff, it's all done in a sort of late 1800s, early 1920s sort of film type thing. Sort of grainy film stock footage and sort of type thing, and also some of those old sort of litho prints that they used to have in the 1800s. After that, it sort of, I don't know, just seemed to lose steam, which is ironic because it's in the 1800s. Steam, get it? Dear. And even Diana Rigg wasn't able to breathe character into the lines. Diana Rigg, like I said to Michael, had actually had this character written for her. And there is one bit when Jenny is fighting all these sort of supermodels. It's all about sort of trying to create the perfect humans, apparently. She actually takes off her Victorian clothes and has a sort of Avengers costume on, which Diana Rigg did in the Avengers. A sort of cat suit. In the 1960s, that was really risque, and that's what Diana Rigg wore after Honor Blackman, of course. So that was a little reference to the Avengers itself. Not the superhero Avengers, although strangely enough, Black Widow's it in that film. Scarlett Johansson wears something similar. So, and I have to admit, she looks rather nice in it. Not Hulk. I don't want to see him naked. Thank you very much. But I don't know what went wrong with it. After that, it went downhill a little bit. I don't know. Just maybe maybe it's just because they didn't use Vastra and Strax as much. And then you find out that it's just like Genesis of the Daleks, really. Yeah. Create a sort of master race type thing. At the end of Moonraker, Jules and his girlfriend don't fit into it because they're not the perfect specimen. That's what Gilliflower wants to do, which is odd because it doesn't seem to have any purpose, really. She wants to perhaps she's just religiously completely mad or something, and she, for some strange reason, thinks Mr. Sweet can do it. And the last really good bit of this episode is the confrontation between the Doctor and Mrs. Gilliflower, which is absolutely brilliant. Wonderful lines between them. Only a few, but really brilliant, Also rather funny as well. Good old classic, Doctor meets enemy, puts down enemy, that sort of thing. And then unfortunately, to me at least, it totally unravels because we finally discover who Mr. Sweet is, and it isn't the Candyman. If it had been the Candyman, I guarantee you, it would have been brilliant. Yes, it would have been completely bonkers, to have the Candyman behind it all, but it would have been fantastic, I mean, just imagine it, the Candyman in Victorian England. What a weird sort of clash of, sweets, basically. Pick a mix, I suppose you call it. Turns out that Mr. Sweet is basically the very same thing which Vastra mentioned. One of those little bastards spreading venom poison 65 million years ago, which has somehow managed to survive into the Victorian age. And here we go again, yet another, it's the last of its kind, blah blah blah. And it's the last of its kind, and it also happens to be stuck on Mrs. Gilliflower. It's a bit creepy, actually, very creepy. So sort of like a really cheap looking alien monster, I suppose, like one of those face hugger bullshit. And it looks like a sort of very small penis. And then when they're firing off the rocket at the end of the episode, that looks like a fucking phallus. I had to point out my dick is bigger than Mr. Sweet. Way bigger than Mr. Sweet. Oh dear, what a load of old shit. I mean, seriously. The one thing I did like is that finally the daughter, totally turns on her mother and starts beating her, which I didn't think was entirely suitable for a kids' show or something like that, She's finally realised that all the fire and brimstone bullshit is simply that, bullshit. So anyway, she tries to fire a rocket up into the sky, which is thwarted, of course. And then, it's ridiculous. She's about to shoot the Doctor, and then Strax fires his laser cannon, and she just sort of plonks to the ground, which is really anticlimactic. And then Mr. Sweet decides to detach himself in a non-sexual way and starts to wriggle across the floor as she's dying. And then I finally realised what Mr. Sweet really is. Mr. Hanky, the Christmas poo. Yeah, that's what Mr. Sweet is. Mr. Hanky, the Christmas poo. He loves you and I love you. All that sort of thing, That's what he is. He's a red Christmas poo. Mr. Hanky, the Christmas poo. He looks like a penis. He's wriggling across the bloody floor. And what a load of... It's ludicrous. Oh dear. It's another... It doesn't look remote. It looks convincing, but it looks bizarre. He's wriggling across the floor away from, harm's way. But unfortunately, Gilliflower's daughter decides to smash it into 1,000 little penis parts. And that's it, the end of the story, really. And I'll be honest, started off well. 25 minutes in, it loses its steam and starts to really show its weakness. Loved the little flashback bit, and that was absolutely fantastic, that was, to paraphrase the Ninth Doctor. I can't say that word without imagining the Ninth Doctor. But then, by the end, it's just descended into farce, almost. I mean, what the bloody hell was that design of that red cock? It's a penis. It's a penis. It's a penis crawling across the floor away from all the women. Because there were mainly women this episode, And that's another thing, it was like a feminist type thing, which is curious enough, because that's when the suffragettes started to appear. So anyway, the daughter's bludgeoned to death this penis, and that's it, really. That's the end of the episode. The doctor sort of tells the daughter that just because she's blind, she has some worth. But again, it was like a sort of anti-religious statement, really. And then, the only really last good thing about the episode is, out of the blue, this scene where Clara discovers pictures from all the previous adventures. The Christmas special, Cold War, etc. And realises, to her bafflement, that she's, I don't know about you, but I thought it was a bit strange how the kids could, guess that, the Doctor was a time traveller, and that, she's a time traveller, and that he's a, alien. I thought that was a little bit over the top. How the hell would they guess that? But she now knows that something's going on. Because the implication is that she just returned from that adventure in Yorkshire, London, like she points out. She wasn't in London, 1800s, but Yorkshire 1800s. And the kids, leave her to conjure on it. So she does actually know now that something's going on. So the next time she sees the Doctor, I'm presuming she'll be asking him some tough questions, which will also feature those two kids as well. They're going to travel with Clara and the Doctor in the next episode. Oh dear. So Neil Gaiman's Cyberman story, the return of some brand new rebooted back to the 60s Cybermen, the Nightmare and Silver, will be the episode. Guest starring Warwick Davis, of course, and that bloke who played the bad vampire in season 1 and 2 of Being Human. And that's all I can say, really. So, be careful of red penises that poison people. That's all I can say. Until next time, That's the Way It Goes, and enjoy your Doctor Who.